Right, we have a big responsibility to carry on the life and the zechut, and to deliver zechut. The living have big responsibility. And I think by coming here tonight and joining together for a shir, we can do a lot. Not just by listening to a shir and like taking a shower in the words, even if you happen to enjoy it and walking out like nothing happened, but by taking something in and letting it grow inside, and from the totzaot, we'll come back to that word later on, hopefully Bezat Hashem, please God, we'll be able to add many, many schusim, because the Talmud says that tzaddikim afilu b'misasam, tzaddikim, even in the time when they're not alive, nikru chayim, are called alive, because they leave behind a legacy that continues to feed them. Pri tzaddik eitz chayim. Maybe someone will say Yuri was a tzaddik. That was, we don't know. But I'm at kulam tzaddikim, and from what I heard tonight, and I'm probably going to take a look at a picture and say, of course, I met Yuri. You know, whoever he met, he touched like that. He has a tzaddik inside, and he was able to touch and bring out the tzidkis and bring out the greatness and the sweetness inside everybody else. So, Bez Hashem, we'll be able to accomplish a lot tonight. And I every time I just even hear the words chazak, I have to say, Kol HaKavod to the Meirav brothers for all that they do for the community. It's unbelievable. Chazak, chazak, v'nis chazek. They should only grow stronger and stronger in the work that they do, B'ezrat Hashem. I think we're going to look back and we're going to see one day, you know, there was somebody's name was Reb Shraga Feifel Mendelovich, who came, he was here in America, and in the 1940s, sometimes maybe shortly after the war, and he revolutionized Judaism in America for the Ashkenazi that were coming over. They were immigrants, and most of them got lost, and they melted into the sidewalks of America, Reform, conservative, you name it. And he picked up a few people, and he picked up a few members of the community, and they made a revolution. And today we find that the growth of the Jewish community, a lot of it can be credited to a few people who had the foresight, who had the vision, who had the understanding. I think we're going to look back in a number of years and maybe take a decade or two before we have that full perspective, and we'll see that there was a few brothers, there was a few caring people that decided that they weren't going to give up on the community, they weren't going to give up on their family, they weren't going to give up on you and me, and and ultimately they were able to create a revolution in Judaism and to strengthen Judaism. Chazak, chazak, v'nis chazek, Bez Hashem. Whatever we can do to help them and to be a part of it, we have an equal schus, we have an equal merit. Ner le'echad, ner le'meya. When it comes to owning stock in something, in the physical world, if you own 5%, so you don't own 95%. But when it comes to Torah and mitzvahs and spiritual things, everybody can own 100%, even if they contribute whatever they can contribute to be a part of it. Okay, I'm gonna go into my topic tonight, which was amazingly dovetailed and seemed to be created for the events of this tonight, although I hadn't planned. When I was listening to Rabbi Rutenberg, we had spoke briefly and realized that what we're talking about tonight has a lot to do with the subject of the life of Uriel Raphael ben Sarah. So let me tell you, first of all, I have a cousin. The name of tonight's lecture is called The Hidden World in Which We Live. And I have a cousin, and he's a famous off-Broadway actor. I'm not expecting anybody here to know the name of any off-Broadway actors over here. You know, it's a sort of a small world by itself. Those people who I've met people who went to off-Broadway go, oh, Lonnie Price, he's your cousin? Whoa! You know, like suddenly I'm getting reflected glory from being his cousin. But anybody else, never heard of him. So one time he needed his crazy cousin. He needed me. You know why? Because he was putting on a play that had a Jewish theme. The name of the play was called The Immigrant. And what was it about? It was about a fellow that immigrated from Europe, from Eastern Europe. He settled in Texas, of all places. And there, he later on brought over his wife, and he started to make a living, and they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children. And so it was about a Jewish fellow that was settling into and assimilating and accommodating into American culture. And there were a few scenes in that play. I guess little did the author of that play know how far his prophecy, I'll say with a small p because things are predictable, but that a little Jewish boy from Long Island who was producing the play, when it came time when he wrote into the script that there's going to be a mincha, an afternoon prayer service, that this young fellow wouldn't know what to do. He'd be stuck because he assumed that everybody would have known what's mincha. right? And then when it said that there's going to be a Shabbat meal, so he didn't know what menu to put in because they didn't give all the details in the script. So he was afraid in New York, somebody might walk into the theater that remembers, that has at least a little bit of a smell, a remnant of the authentic article, and he's going to expose himself to criticism. So therefore, he hired, and he brought my wife and I down, didn't pay us, but he brought us down as the Jewish consultants. We actually made it into the back of the program, Label and Lam, Jewish consultants. Right? When we came, we actually went to see the play. We checked it out to make sure it was a clean play, and we actually went to see the play. I have to tell you, it was a dubious distinction, a very doubtful honor that we got. And I'll tell you why. Because when we got to the play, he forgot to ask us when it came time for the actual menu itself. He served, at the Friday night meal, they served chicken soup, immediately followed by cheese blintzes. Okay, he was just trying to keep it Jewish over there. And I said, my wife and I were looking, how can we get our names expunged from the program? But it was too late. Yeah? Some of the things that we had to show him how to do over there. Number one, I showed him how to daven mincha. Right? And in the seats that we happened to have, I don't know if he arranged it on purpose, but in the seat that we had, it was this intimate sort of theater, this close theater. And where he davened was, I could feel his hot breath. I was the one that taught him how to daven. And the play carried on for months and months and months. I just happened to see it one night. And what a mincha, what a davening he did over there. I just showed him that, you take a look at it and you move your lips like you're drawing up one long piece of spaghetti. I had to give him some kind of a, way to think about what he's doing with his mouth. And I told him how many times he has to pound and how long he should count before each pounding on the chest, and the bowing and how he has to bow and how he has to come up and all these different things. I showed him, I just blocked it out, just the movements. And he put in, I showed him a couple of these, a couple of, eye squeezes and hand squeezes. And I showed him a couple of raised hand motions. And he did it. What a mincha. I'm telling you, what a fiery mincha. I wish at Ne'ilah and Yom Kippur I could achieve such a mincha, like right before Ne'ilah and Yom Kippur, like he had. For that mincha, he won an Obie, by the way, which like an Academy Award for that. I don't know if it was for the performance or for being the director. But what a hot mincha. And it was just, I told my wife afterwards, I think it was so good, I think that he could probably daven in most congregations and get away with it. In certain places, he could probably even lead the congregation. It was special. It was something amazing. But my wife, my wife had a task of showing. I hadn't heard that there was a shortage of Jewish actresses in New York, right? But they invited this little redheaded. They couldn't find any other Jewish girl to play the Yiddish mama, the Jewish mommy, except a little red-headed Irish girl with an Irish brogue, no less, like this, speaking like with and she had to make over her accent and everything. My wife had to show her backstage, and I was there when she showed her how to light the candles, how to light Shabbos candles. And my wife was showing her over and over again that she lighted the candles, and the waving in front of the eyes. And she goes, "Am I scratching my eyes out?" And I said, "No, that's the religion down the block. This is nice. It's pleasant. It's and then she did it again and again. My wife lit the candles, and she lit the candles, and my wife lit the candles, and she lit the candles. And then she did it the way my bubby lit the candles. It was so beautiful. I felt like immediately launching into singing Zmirot. Something. It was stunning. And then this little red-headed Irish girl asked a question that maybe only an actor or an actress can ask with their method acting. And she said the following thing. She goes, "Now that I know how to light the candles," she says, "and now that I know how to emulate the action and to do it the way that I was just taught, now for her internality, for the motivation," she says, "What's my motivation?" That's what she wants to know. That's what she asked my wife. And my wife and I were both taken back. What a stunning question. Of course, we gave her the local answer. When you're lighting the candles for Shabbat, that means you're coming to a point of rest. You've been working and hustling all week long, and now all suddenly, that's it. You've thrown a blanket over everything. You're going to light those candles, and now there's nothing more to do. You're not going to pick up another hammer. You're not going to clip another nail. That's it. It's Shabbat. The food is cooked. Whatever is ready, and you can take that deep, sublime breath. Beautiful. But the question still resonates through the cosmos of my mind. What is our motivation? We have a whole menu, a whole Shulchan Aruch, a whole code of Jewish law that tells us when to bow, which direction to face, which candles to light, what to do first, what to do second, when to eat, when to stop eating, Erev Yom Kippur, who and how to marry, and all these different things. But the question still remains, what's my motivation? Why do we do these things? So the truth is, in order to understand anything in life, it has to be understood in context, which means anything taken out of context can easily be misunderstood. If I go to the bank with my children and I put money into the bank and the lady hands me a little pink slip, after giving her, a thick wad of bills, so he says, whoa, how come you got a little piece of paper back and she keeps your money? What did you get for it? He doesn't understand, that I just deposited something, so there's something missing in his information, so he thinks that somehow I lost something. Didn't realize that I had invested something. Misunderstandings can happen all the time. There's a shul where I go to daven on Shabbat. I have to walk through a junior high school field, and there I'm watching people. They're playing, in certain seasons they're playing soccer, and another season they're playing cricket. There's a small window, they're playing cricket. Anybody know cricket? Cricket, it's something like baseball. Baseball I know. Baseball I love. Baseball, I can talk about baseball. Cricket, they got a flat bat. They got this ball. The guy bowls it with a stiff arm. And the fellow comes in and he hits it like this. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what. He hits the ball. Was this practice? How come he didn't run? Is that a foul ball? Is that considered a hit? Did somebody score a point? I don't know what's going on with cricket. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm walking to shul. I'm watching on the way there and the way back a couple of Pakistani guys playing cricket at this season. And I'm sure they're also wondering, who's this guy with the barcodes on his shoulders? What's that all about? So when people are looking at the things that we're doing, so of course, out of context, it doesn't make any sense. And the things that we're watching them doing, it doesn't make any sense because you don't understand the rules of the game. So let's take a look and try to understand. If we want to understand mitzvot, we have to see it in the context of all contexts. Okay? And that's going to be the introduction, the first layer to our shir over here today. There's a beautiful Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that says the following amazing thing. It says, Be'asara ma'marot nivra ha'olam, the world was created with 10 statements. And then the Talmud, the Gemara, the Mishnah asked the following question. What is it coming to teach us? Umat Talmud Lomer. He says, isn't it that a Kodesh Baruch Hu could not have created the world with one statement? The Kodesh Baruch Hu, nothing limits the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So why did he create it in 10 statements? Right? If an artist can say it with one brushstroke, so why does he need 10 brushstrokes? Right? Hashem can do it with one brushstroke. Why do you need 10? If the poet could say it with one word, why did he need 10 words? There's an implied economy of motion, an economy of action. So the Mishnah gives the following answer. That's not so easy to understand. It says, Ella lihipare min harashoyim, in order to take payment, to exact payment from the wicked people. Shema'avdin es ha'olam shenivr basara mamaros, that destroy and sabotage a world that was created with 10 statements. V'litein sechar tov l'tzadikim, and to give a proper reward to tzadikim. Shemakaimim es ha'olam shenivr basara mamaro, in order to give also a proper reward to those righteous people that endorse and help and support and give chizuk to a world that was created with 10 statements. So what is that about? What's the 10 statements? It still doesn't explain what the 10 statements are. And why was the world created with 10 statements? So the Mishnah gives an answer, but the answer doesn't seem to make any sense. In order to punish Rashayim, in order to reward Tzadikim. So in order to understand this, I think we have to take one step back. And again, I'm going to ask everybody, just for a few moments over here, to put on your mystical seatbelts over here, because we might hear a mystical concept. I want you to hold on to yourself, not to fly away from the world. Stay attached to the world over here. When we go back to the beginning, and we see what were these 10 statements. So we go back to Bereshit, and we find out, we count, there were 10 statements with which the world was created, right? That's what the next Mishnah tells us. What were these 10 statements? And we count, and we find, Vayomer Elokim Yehior, Vayomer Elokim, Vayomer Elokim, Vayomer Elokim, and we find out that there were only 9. Oh my gosh. So the Mishnah tells us there was 10. And now we find out there was 9 when we count them. From the beginning of the creation, after Bereshit, until the creation of man, 9 statements. 9 times it says Vayomer. So what does the Talmud in Chagiga say? It says, Bereshit Nami Maimer. Bereshit itself, even though it doesn't say Hashem spoke, is considered the all-inclusive statement with which the world was created. The world was created with words. And the first statement is Bereshit. Now, how is that a statement? Now, let's focus in for a second. Bereshit, the commentaries tell us, was the all-inclusive statement that was like the world now came to discover the truth about a certain paradigm in science in the last 50, 60 years of the previous century, a thesis in a theory in science that was called the Big Bang Theory. Anybody heard of the Big Bang Theory? Torah has always believed in. There was two primary approaches. One was the static state theory that the world always was. How can something come from the world was always was? That's a world. And the other approach was it started from a certain point, and it started from a certain vector, and it came up to prove that there's something called the Big Bang Theory. Now, we've always believed in the Big Bayes theory. Right? The Torah starts with a Bayes. And the Bayes seems to have three walls on it. It actually starts with a giant Bayes. And the Mishnah in Chagiga says, don't look what's above, don't look what's behind, and don't look what's below. These are things you can't know about. The movie seems to be moving in a certain direction over there. History started from a certain dot, from a certain point, and from that point, the whole world was created. So even though the Mishnah says, don't look what came before, and don't look what came after, we're going to take a peek over there for 1 second. How can we take a peek? So we can ask the following question. What preceded the Bayes of Bereshis? What preceded the Bayes of Bereshis? Can anybody tell me? What was it? We can get a hint over here. Why did the Torah start with the letter Bayes? It should have started better with the letter Aleph. So what preceded the Bayes of Bereshis? And the answer is the Aleph of Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Beterem Kol, Yitzir Nivra. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Beterem Kol, Yitzir Nivra. Before anything was created, there was Adon Olam, there was a master of the world before anything was created. That's what we say. It's not just a nice song. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, Beterem Kol, before anything was created, there was a master of the world. What was the base of Bereshis? Bereshis means not that Hashem created something. This is what the actually, from a physical standpoint, Bereshis bara means the actual creation of something from nothing. There was no particles. There was no electricity. There was no large attraction. There was no small attraction. There was no neutrons. There was no protons. There was no electrons. There was none of these things that existed. There was no gravity. So what existed? What preceded? So what was created? Yesh ma'ayin. Something was created from nothing, from a physical standpoint. The Sefer Tanya says the following thing, that actually the world was created at that time, pardon me, nothing from something. Because before the world was the most important something was a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Let's just imagine that we have a giant ocean, an Or Ein Sof. That's how it's referred to. We can't even say what it is. We can only say that it's an Or, a light, Ein Sof, that doesn't end. We have an ocean of endless light. And in this ocean of endless light suddenly opens up a little dot, a little black spot, a little bubble. Right? And into this bubble now comes, into this little dot that's surrounded by light. That is where Kadosh Baruch Hu is connecting. He withdrew himself, so to speak, from that spot. And there's an illusion of an emptiness and an absence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But a Kadosh Baruch Hu was hovering over and looking at and observing that spot. So if we'd be at the center of this spot over here, we would see a straight line that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is looking at us and staring at us. It's as if the boss says to the secretary, please, I want you to begin to type and, produce these 10 letters that I need for later on today. And then he stands there and watches, and the boss is watching, so she's not going to deviate, take a coffee break, or do anything that he doesn't want her to do because he's staring there. But a smart boss, who maybe wants to test her loyalty, says, you know what I'm going to do? Margie, could you do me a favor? Type up these 10 letters. Okay, I'll see you later on. And he goes back into his room, and he draws the curtain on his window, and little does she know, but he has a one-way mirror, and she might go over there and begin to check herself in the mirror, and he also has like a little, a camera in the corner, and he's observing what's going on to see what she's doing in a way that she can't see. So there might be a curtain that was drawn down, and some kind of and the shades were drawn, but still he's able to observe what's going on. He's only covered himself up. These 10 statements, the commentaries say, is a process of a Kadosh Baruch Hu covering himself up each and every time. From the beginning of creation, the world was an obviously extremely spiritual place. It was an extremely ruchnistic place. Hashem was so obvious. There's no free will. We were like angels. We would have been like angels right at the beginning of creation, and that was one of the first creations. let's go back to the first statement. What was the first of the 10 statements that said not besides Bereshis? What would be the first statement? Anybody? Vayomer Elokim, Yehi Or, let there be light. When we want to speak about this before the sun, this is before planets. So we understand that this or is talking about a different type of an or, a different range of light than what we're used to experiencing, right? That's what we're talking about over here. So when a person has a spiritual awakening, what do we say? A light. That something happened, a light went on in our minds. People have a near-death experience. They also talk about going to the light. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. So there's something about light, which is the most spiritual thing in the whole universe that, on a physical plane. Let's think about that for a second. Light. And then what happens is, everything becomes thicker and thicker and thicker. The world becomes a darker and darker place. But everything starts with light. Energy equals mass times, okay, the speed of light squared. Everything starts with energy, and then it becomes sublimated into darker and heavier stuff. And the world is really made up of sublimated energy, this sublimated light. If I would tell you, for example, that I'm wearing sunshine on my shoes, on my feet today, you're saying, what is that, a poetic way of saying that you want to go dancing? I like dancing. I'm in a good mood. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling light on my feet. No, I have sunshine on my feet. I literally have sunshine on my feet. What is the sunshine I have on my feet? The sunlight came pouring down onto this earth from 93 million miles away. Set up in an open field someplace are these incredible solar panels, which is called grass, right? And through the process of photosynthesis, somehow chlorophyll is created. And along comes Elsie the cow, munch, munch, munch. And she grabs into some of that grass. She takes it into her system. And she converts it into leather that now grows on her back. Yeah? So now along comes the shochet. He shechs the cow. It goes off to Cholent on Shabbos. And the leftovers, they say they don't want to waste any parts. So they send the rest over to the Echo shoe factory, and I'm wearing genuine cowhide leather shoes, and I'm wearing sunshine, it's sublimated sunshine, on my feet. The world became a darker and a thicker and a more viscous place until the Talmud says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to his world, Omar la'alamo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to his world, die. Enough, like we have on the mezuzah, die. Dayenu, like we say at the Pesach Seder. Die doesn't mean that's enough with the Seder, let's get on with the food. Die means that it's just at the right shin daled yud, means that the world is exactly at that balance point where the world is physical enough, it's thick enough, that if a person wants to get lost in this world, he can get lost in the world. It's spiritual enough, it's still translucent and tinged with enough wonder, that if a person wants to find Hashem like Avraham Avinu began to do, then a person can find Hashem. It's shaded, the shade of the glasses, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it just dark enough that you can get lost. He made it just light enough so that there's something called free will can take place over here. If it would be a little bit too light, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu would be obvious and he would overwhelm us with his spirituality and we'd have no free will. If it would be too dark, then we'd have no chance of finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu and doing the right thing. And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up this world in such a beautiful balance point over there. And that's what the word olam means. Olam comes from the Hebrew word ayin lamed mem, which means hidden. It's a hiding place. And not that we're hidden. From HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's the boss looking through the one-way mirror. We're on the other side. We're on the reflected side. So we see a diffracted and a disparate world. But from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's vantage point, everything is visible. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bochein levavos. He sees everything right down to the core. He sees everything in a perfect unity. From our vantage point, we see a splintered world. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that's hidden in the world. And the world came down to that physical. The last thing to be created is man. And man, in certain ways, is a summary of the darkness of the depth of the physical creation. But on the other hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu breathed the breath of life into man. V'yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. And therefore, man stretches like that Yaakov Avinu's ladder. V'hinei sulam mutzav archav arosha magia shemaima. And we stretch somewhere from the tops, from before creation, from the breath of Hashem, all the way down to the depth of this earth over here. If a person will let go from the earthiness, from here, lech lecha me'artzecha, from the earthiness of this world, he'll go flying up to the heavens like a rubber band. And if he'll let go of the heavens, somehow he'll go plummeting down into this earth over here. And that's the balance point, and that's the struggle, and that's the stage that was created, and that's really what the Mishnah comes to tell us, that man was created, the world was created with 10 statements because there's layers of creation over here. And it was set up in such a way, it's been tinted enough, that if a person wants to find a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he can find a HaKadosh Baruch Hu if he asks why hard enough and strong enough, and he looks deeply enough, he'll find it. And if a person doesn't want to find it, he can go into Manhattan back and forth, and he can surf the net, and he can do whatever he wants, and he can click, and he can get whatever he wants for 70 years, and never find it even once. And that's the way the world was set up. They say the great person's name was the Ohev Yisrael. And this great rabbi called the Ohev Yisrael, Rabbi Avram Yeshua Heschel, that was the name of his book, it was called the Ohev Yisrael. They say he was meeting with his Hasidim, they were all gathered around him. And then one day, a boy who was crying, was weeping very strong, came rushing towards the Rebbe, and the sea split, the Hasidim moved over, and the boy came right to the Rebbe's heart. The Rebbe spoke to him, and some of the Hasidim were listening in. The boy was describing what happened. He says, we were outside and we were playing hide and go seek. And he says it was Shimon's turn to hide, and everybody found him. And it was Chaim's turn to find, and everybody found him. It was Yaakov's turn to hide, and everybody found him. And then the boy started weeping heavy. He says, and then it was my turn to hide. He says, what's the Rebbe? What's the matter? What happened? He says, nobody looked for me. And the Rebbe held him close to his chest, reached into one pocket and gave him a candy, reached into another pocket and gave him a coin. The boy's smile started to grow on the boy's face. He gave him a kiss on the head, and the boy left feeling a little bit consoled. At least the Rebbe was able to talk to him a little bit. So when the boy left, so the Hasidim say, what a great Rebbe we have. He says, what? He says that you were able to feel, and empathize and feel the pain and the difficulty of that poor little boy over there. He says, because the Rebbe himself was crying. He says, no, the Rebbe says, that's not why I was crying. He says, why were you crying then, Rebbe? He says, the reason why I was crying is now I understand how Hashem feels. Because when it's my turn to hide, He finds me. When it's your turn to hide, He finds you. When it's this one's turn to hide, He finds. But when it's my turn to hide, Mimavakesh, who's looking? Who's searching for Hashem? So Hashem is the one that's in this hidden world. Now we have enough information to ask the question that really is going to launch us into action over here. That was all a baseline. And the question is something that my son asked me. He must have been 7 or 8 years old. And we're sitting at the Shabbat table, and I got sideswept. I didn't expect this to happen. And he asked me a question that was so profound and so deep, I knew the answer to it. But what shocked me was, here I must have been 40-something years old at the time. And here I have a young man asking me a question that I didn't begin to even think about this until I saw an essay by Rabbi Eliezer Dessler that's called Hazman Ve'Chaim. That's called Time and Life. He wrote an essay in the 4th volume in Hebrew, the 4th Krach. It's called Hazman Ve'Chaim, 3-4-page essay about time and life. Hazman Ve'Chaim, Chaim Hazman. And my son asked me a question. He says, Abba, he looks me square in the eye like it's really bothering him. He says, what happened to yesterday? Abba, what happened to yesterday? You hear the question? What happened to yesterday? What happened to yesterday? What happened to last year? You hear that question? You ever have one of those days it was so hard, and then what happened to it? Went away? You ever have one of those years that was such a hard year? My wife gave birth to twins one year. We didn't sleep the whole year. My beard turned white that one year. At the end of the year, I put my head down. We cried. Said, we can't believe we made it through the year because sleep was a vocabulary word. We didn't do it. And then it became the past. That's it. What happened to it? This is not just a light philosophical question. I meet with college students also. And sometimes someone will ask me, Rabbi, do I exist? Right? I bumped into that. If you heard it. Do I exist? I have an answer for that. Very practical answer. Let me hold your wallet until you figure out the answer to the question. Oh, no. You know? Okay, so I see that you presume that your wallet exists. You know, you don't want to yield your credit cards to me. You don't want to trust me with it. So it must have in your mind some kind of a feeling of a reality to it. Yeah? So this is not one of those types of questions. This is a real practical question. Why should I put so much effort into tomorrow if it's going to become yesterday? I remember sitting one time in a shiur in New Jersey someplace. Nobody wanted to be there, okay? Maybe people don't want to be here either. What could I say? And I started mentioning this subject. And some nice lady, a Russian lady from Moscow, she belts out like an opera singer. And I said, what happened to yesterday? She goes, all the yesterdays are building up to a beautiful tomorrow. She said like an opera singer. And everybody applauded like she really zapped the rabbi this time. And I told her, Madame, please. But what happens when the great tomorrow becomes yesterday? You know? When I used to visit my mother in the Bronx, so she said, Label, they have the incinerator over there. Throw me down the chute. Mom, I won't do that, Ma. You're my mother-in-law. No, throw me down the chute, the garbage. I said, okay, Ma, that'll do. You know? So I throw it down the chute. And it looks eerily similar to the guy at the end of the workday, right, who takes that brown burlap bag and he goes to the bank and he opens up the same thing and he puts it in there. How does he know he's not putting it into a... Why work the business all day long if you're putting it into the incinerator? It's just going to get burnt up to pieces. So same thing, why work the whole day if it's going to go into the incinerator? Is it going into the incinerator or is it going to be banked away someplace? So Rabbi Dessler gives the following answer. Listen to this. He gives a three-dimensional model because time is something which is very hard to hang on to. It's interesting that at the time that light was created, time was created also. So therefore, it's one of those spiritual things, time, that it's hard for us to grab onto, just like it's hard to grab onto light. When time was created, when light was created, time was created. Because if you can go faster than the speed of light, you go back in time. Okay? Anybody understand that? Anybody not understand that? Right? If something's going, time is limited to the speed of light. That's why it says V'hi erev v'hi boker yom echad, right after the creation of light. So therefore, it's very hard to put our hand around it. But he gives a three-dimensional model. Imagine that we have. Maybe you never saw it before, one of those disco balls. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. You don't have to acknowledge it, okay? And you have one of those balls with the little mirrors and glass things all around it. You know what I'm talking about? Like the sun that's suspended in silence. It has no wires attached to it. Can you imagine setting up such a universe like that there's no wires that's holding up the... that would be a great thing to see if somebody can invent a chandelier that has no wires or anything attached. It just sort of sits and floats in the middle of the thing. Huh? Got something to work on now. Okay, great. I see. Don't beat me to it. Remember, I get a piece of the action. And you got this thing that's hanging over there like that. And around this light glowing ball, we're going to put a very thick, dark, let's say like a tennis ball thick, we're going to put like an opaque, dark cover around it. And we're going to open up a window now for you guys on this side that's going to be a 1 inch by 1 inch window. Now you can see into the ball and only see 1 inch, 1 square inch into the middle of the ball. Yeah? You got what I'm talking about? There you see the light coming out. Now what happens is, I'm going to move the ball, Reb Dessler says, on the outside. This is life and time. I'm going to move the ball on the outside. You're looking at a certain square right now. I'm moving the ball and rotating around the outside. Now you're looking at another square inch. The square inch you were looking at a moment ago was just covered up. He says the part that was just covered up is called the past. The part that's just been exposed is called the present. The part that's about to be exposed is called the future. And what happens after 120 years? What is Olam Haba? What is the next world? The next world is the cover falls off altogether, and the person is exposed to the world of eternity, which is V'hu Haya, V'hu Hoveh, V'hu Yeyeh, V'hu Mahavet HaKol. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol. We come into the world of Hashem. His name, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, is a contraction of those three concepts of past, present, and future. He was, He is, and He will be, and there is no more time. Everything is in a certain static revelation and an endless revelation of the Or Ein Sof of the light of Hashem. Wow. That's what it's all about. Okay? So, actually the Gemara in Brachot tells us that there's Totzaot. I think there's 903. The Gematria Totzaot is 903 different types of ways that a person leaves the world. One is called Askara, which is very difficult. That's the hardest. They say it's like pulling wool, separating wool and thorns that get meshed together. There's another mashal that's given of pulling ropes through boats. It's very hard because the neshama and the body don't want to separate from each other. It's very hard. Breaking up is hard to do. Remember passing by in 47th Street and seeing a guy, his delivery van was being towed away by the DOT. And this fellow came out and he said, I just went to deliver a package. I came right out. I'm here. And he was lying on the front of his van over there, and he wouldn't let them tow it away. The neshama is also clamoring away. Don't take away my body. Don't displace me. Don't throw me out of my house. Now comes the lightest form is called the Misa Shel Neshika, which is the kiss of death, not the mafia's kiss of death. That's something else. Okay, we're talking about over here we're talking about over here, that somehow the neshama separates from the body very easily, and the Gemara gives a mashal. It's like pulling a hair out of milk. I remember my rabbi asking us 30 some odd years ago, since when is the goof, since when is the neshama pulling the hair out of milk? Since when is the neshama compared to hair? Esav was called the hairy one. He was hairy. And he created to a mountain. It was called Har Seir, which was really a mountain of hairs. Hairs represents physicality, materialism, being so concerned about hair, that Yosef was playing with his hair. The hair represents materialism. And milk represents light, spirituality, represents something which is pure and nourishing. And the rabbi says that's exactly the truth. Because it's just the removal of the body, it's the removal of that shell, and suddenly we're in the Olam HaNeshamot, and the world Olam Haba is just, it's here. We're in the Olam HaNeshama, except we happen to be in the Hester, we're in the hidden world, in the world of Olam. Now I always had this question. So the world therefore is like a map. Even though I'm traveling down to the I-95 South, and I'm going to Florida. Let's say I was never in Florida before, and I have hotel reservations, I have a date with Destiny over there. But as I'm traveling there, all the way down to Florida, I'm somewhere in Virginia, and I think to myself, is New Jersey still there? Nowadays you have to check. You have to give a call home to find out. Is New York still there? Is Queens still there? Well, you assume that of course it's there. Just like same thing in time, you assume that yesterday is still there. It just got wound onto the film, and I happen to be here now. And then tomorrow the ball will pass over, the light will pass over, the exposure will come to another point over there that I'll be in Florida. That's my next date with Destiny. But I always had this question. How come when you hear that somebody is passing the drowning, I never had the experience, but there's always somebody who comes up to me later on and says, I had that experience. They always have the same experience. What was the experience? That they saw their life, they saw their whole life pass in front of them in one moment. I always wondered, how can your life pass in front of you in one moment? Right? If it took 40, 30, 20, however long, 70 years, and suddenly the life passes in front of you, right? Why is one moment like that? It was 70 years to live it. You're waiting for the train to come. You're waiting for him to call, right? All these different things. And life seems to be going on, and it's so slow, and it's, one drop of sand coming through the hourglass at a time, and all of a sudden you see the whole life pass in front of you. How could that happen in one moment? So I was thinking like this, using a little bit of Rabbi Dessler's model of a physical world, is sometimes you take the globe and you could press it against the wall over here. And a person is sort of like painting by numbers on a scaffold. You ever see these? Oh, you see these scaffolds. Of course, we're in Queens, right? And you see on the highway they have a giant scaffold. Let's say that somebody's painting by numbers. He's doing it by hand. And he's out there and he has blinders on, these myopic blinders that only allow him to see what he has in front of him. Not to see to the right, not to see to the left. And there's these little blobs and blurbs that you put, 6 means red, 5 means blue, 2 means green, boom, boom, boom. And he's painting by numbers, and he's coloring the line. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And then he moves along to the next station, the next station. There's 365 along one row. Then he goes down to the next row, and he gets 365 back across the other row. Then it's 365, and he keeps on going down. After 70 or 120 or 24, however, he pushes back away from the painting, and there it is, the painting that he created. There it is. There's the whole thing. As long as he's working up close, he doesn't see it. The minute he pushes back from it, then he's able to see it, and he can catch it in one full glance, all the dots and all the jittles and all the little movements that the person made and the results of those movements. And this was confirmed in a book that I saw one night when a fellow came to me on a Thursday night, late on a Thursday night, a guy that never found his place in our community in Muncie. For whatever reason. It had a lot to do with him, I do believe. But we used to house him and hold him and hang on to him. He came with a lot of baggage. But his baggage just wasn't psychological or emotional baggage. His baggage was, he came with a whole menagerie, a whole giant farm of animals that were traveling along with him, right? And after a while, it became burdensome, hearing chickens and roosters and everything all night long and cackling. And the people said, eventually, we have feathers, we have flies, we have to take these cats and these dogs and whatever he had. And he had to move from place to place, so he never felt settled. And he always went with his animals. One late Thursday night, I get an emergency bang on my door. What is it? David, what's going on? He says, you'll find out. Everyone will find out. You all know. You'll find out. You'll see. You will. He's ranting. I said, what? You'll see. What see? Who see what? Who's what? What? What are you talking about? And he said, I'm moving. I'm going. I said, what's with your animals? I'm going to take them. I'm going to drown them. I'm going to kill them. I said, no, you loved your animals. You gave up so much for your animals already. That's not the way to... And then I realized that he was so overexcited that he was hinting at me that he was going to do something, a terrible thing. And what was he going to do? He was going to commit, I didn't even want to say the words, the most terrible crime. The Gemara says, Ezehu tipesh, who was the foolish person? Ha'ma'abed masha beyado, he destroys, kol masha beyado, he destroys what you give him. You give a kid a glass of grape juice, he spills it on the white couch. You give him a car, boom, he crashes it. You give him a $1,000 bill, he goes to Atlantic City, and he lights it up with a cigar, right? That's it. And he comes back away and says, what did you do? I gave you something good, and you destroyed it. I gave you an education, you destroyed it. I gave you things, you destroyed it. I gave you life, and you destroyed it. I said, you can't do it. It's the biggest crime. You're not allowed to do it. And he tells me, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. And I said, David, you can't come here and tell me that you're going to do this and then go out and do it because I love you. I care about, that's why you came to me, obviously. And since I care about you, you'd be hurting one of the people who cares about you the most. I won't let you do it. He started reciting poetry. I said, what do you think you're going to get out of it? He says, I'm going to a light. I saw, he went to a Grateful Dead concert. I don't know what he was sipping, okay, whatever it is. And he says, I saw a light, I saw this, and that's what happened, and I'm going to go there. I'm going to take a quick, run there. I said, David, I don't think so. We stayed up all night long. He was reciting poetry. I recited a couple of poems. I said, I want to see those poems. You haven't written anywhere. I said, you can't just go and not let me see those poems and see, what they're all about. You sound like you got some amazing talent. We ate all the Shabbos cookies and milk before he left, and I felt comfortable. He should go at 4 o'clock in the morning. The next day, he came back to me with the poems. And meanwhile, I had a chance to run to the book, and I found the library a book that I'd seen something once before, Light After Light, something, and it showed that people who had tried to take their life aborted suicides, and they went, instead of going down this glorious tunnel into a light of accepting and a loving, embracing light, they found themselves, when they were getting closer, that they were getting rejected, and they were told, go back, you fool! You fool! Like the father who looked with a look of a glare at the kid who spills the grape juice on the white couch. How dare you do such a thing? And so I showed him account after account that don't think you're going to get a happy reception. Don't think it's going to be what you expect. So he got scared off from that. But the real prize was I turned another page or two, and I saw that this woman is describing. A Gentile lady and a few other accounts are describing what happened. Instead of going down a tunnel of light, which is only one type of account, this lady goes into, she sees her world in front of her like a series of dots. Isn't it interesting? When you take a look at a picture of somebody, right, in the newspaper, you open up the Bet Gabriel magazine, and you see, oh, there's a picture of the Rishon LeZion. There's a picture of the chief rabbi of Israel. But when you see him, you're not seeing him. That's not his nose, that's not his eyes. If you take a jeweler's loupe and you put over it, what do you have over there? Dots, pixels, right? Happens to be a clear picture because it's small pixels, the details. So you're only looking at pixels. She saw her life as a series of little dots, these little pixels, these little paint-by-number dots. And she decided, let me go into one of these files, one of these icons, let me click it and go into this world. She goes into that file, and suddenly she finds herself being enveloped into an experience of something that happened 30 years ago. And in that experience from 30 years ago, she describes that she's in a department store, Macy's or whatever, and on the 3rd floor there's a child that got separated from their mother. And the child is crying and anxious, what am I going to do? What's going to be? Mommy, mommy, mommy. She took this child, she said, give a call out that there's a child on the 3rd floor that's looking for, what's your name, Melissa? Melissa's looking for her mommy. And then he announced it over the whole store. Meanwhile, she has the child on the counter and she's talking to him, telling him, your mommy's on her way. She's looking for you. She loves you. And she's here. She didn't give up on you. You're going to go home and sleep at the same house with your mommy. And she's talking to the child. She describes how while she's talking to this child and trying to calm her nerves down and make her feel good, she's feeling in this world without barriers. Right? Normally when give somebody a compliment, said you look nice today. Or you give somebody a piece of chocolate cake and you watch it go down their system, you see the smile on their face, you can only assume based upon your experience and your reading that they're having a good time. But you don't feel it, what they feel. She said she was feeling washing back on her whatever good she was doing for somebody else. She felt it coming back on her in waves and waves of sublime goodness like she had never experienced anything before in her entire life. It's an incredible thing. And she says, this is the experience of the next world. Is that you experience whatever it is that you did to the other person. Wow. She goes, that's unbelievable. It was such an incredible experience. All I did was put a couple of nice calming words to somebody else, make them feel a little bit good. She backs out of that experience and she goes into another little window over there. And she goes, let me try this one. And over there she was saying hurtful words to her mother. Boom! And she felt the pain, and she felt the angst, and she felt the hurt that she was given to her mother, also multiplied and amplified. She goes, oh my gosh. And then this Gentile author writes the following thing after giving a number of accounts. Listen to this. This is stunning. She says, if this is true, if this is what the experience of the next world is, that whatever it is that we did to other people, that's what we experience. And I remember telling an Israeli cab driver while we were on our way to the airport and we were passing by Tel Aviv, and they have this giant monolith of a building which I guess is the equivalent of their Pentagon. And I was trying in my best Hebrew that I could to explain to him this concept. What this lady said. She said, if that's the experience of the next world, I can think of no greater punishment for those Nazi perpetrators. She says, than that they should experience what they did to other people. They took a mother and daughter, they took a family, they marched them out into an open field and had them dig a pit, naked in the freezing cold, and humiliated them. And then they shot them to die and to squirm to death out there in those situations. That's what they should experience forever. Hashem Yerachem. Lo Yerachem. And the Mishnah says, Altis Yayish Min Paranias, don't give up, there's such a thing called payback. And I told this Israeli fellow over here, this driver, I said, if a fellow thinks he's going to walk into a pizza shop with nails and bombs and rat poison, and he's going to go to the next world and it's going to be some kind of a discotheque club and they're going to take care of his personal needs up there, just the opposite is true. You're going to fly a plane into a building, the holy terror that he brings down onto the minds and the hearts and the bodies of the families and the survivors, that's what he's going to experience forever. That's what they're going to soak in. Just the opposite. And Mida Tova Meruba, Alachas Kama V'Kama, how much more so in the other direction, the positive direction. Avram Avinu understood this. That when you go out into the world and you find a wayward stranger, Yuri understood this, Uriel understood this. You give a smile, you give a chizuk, and that's what you experience forever, what you gave to somebody else. Give a deli sandwich, Avram Avinu understood. Cool off somebody's feet. Teach them about a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's the greatest pleasure. Kirvas Elokim Li Tov. That's the greatest good. Turn them on to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Complete them. Give them a feeling of accomplishment in life. And when Avraham Avinu went and did those things, that's what he's going to experience forever. What comes out from this is an amazing thing. Few amazing things. We see that the 613 mitzvahs, even though from a physical standpoint and a bodily standpoint they feel like mitzvahs, there's 613 things that our body says we got to do. I got a bench. I just ate. Right? But from a spiritual standpoint, from the neshama standpoint, the Zohar says it's 613 eitzot, 613 itos, 613 things, advices on what we can do. The Torah says you want to be in a movie that you want to feel that's a movie forever, that you're going to feel good about. You know what? Then do to somebody else as you would want to be done to you. Because when you're going to behave to that person, then you're going to feel the pleasure. Hillel told the ger, the potential convert, that if it's hateful to you or hurtful to you, don't do it to somebody else. Because that's what you're going to experience forever. And now I have a very big chiddush I want to share with you. It's not just when you give somebody a piece of cheesecake, you experience the cheesecake. And you give somebody a good word, you experience the good word. It's even much more than that. Because sometimes my wife and I have the experience, we look out the window on a nice spring day and we see the kids are swinging in the back. And suddenly somebody falls off the swing and they get a boo-boo and they're crying. And you watch. I say, Ima, watch this. The little one, the big one picks up the little one and washes off the boo-boo and gives a kiss and makes it all better. Or you peek into the living room sometime and you see that in the morning this one is pouring that one a bowl of cereal. And not only are they going to get and they're reading a book, the little big one is reading to the little one. Huh? I got a couple of people, once or twice you experienced that, right? Yeah, me too. Okay? Once or twice you have that experience. And when you're looking at it, not only are they going to get an experience of pouring a bowl of Cocoa Puffs with their brother or sister on Shabbat, or wiping off the boo-boo and making it feel better like that lady did. But there's a wide-angle lens. They're going to get nachas ruach. They're going to get a pleasure from the parents. Therefore, somebody gives nachas ruach to the parents, they have a riches yomim. What does a riches yomim mean? That they're always giving nachas ruach to the parents. They asked one nice young lady in a shir one time, I heard a rabbi ask, he says, what's your parents' greatest source of pleasure? Big smile came across her face. She says, me. She says, what's your parents' greatest source of pain? She says, my sister. Kids can be the greatest source of pleasure. They can be the greatest source of pain. Somebody who's honoring their parents is giving them pleasure all the time. Every time I think of them, they give me pleasure. And that means it's a riches yomim, that their entire existence is a life of meaning. Because the parents, they're getting the pleasure that they're giving to their parents all the time. They're constantly giving pleasure. Not just when they're giving Cocoa Puffs to their brother and sister. Not when they're giving a chizuk to their friend. But all the time. And there's a bigger wide-angle lens. Because it's not just the nachas ruach you give to your parents, it's the nachas ruach LaHashem. How many times is that mentioned in Chumash? That a person's given nachas ruach LaHashem. They're getting the greatest wide-angle lens, is the person is giving pleasure to God. And therefore the pleasure they give to a Kadosh Baruch Hu is the pleasure that they feel. That's what the Mesilas Yesharim says. The world was created to enjoy the pleasure of Hashem. And the person giving pleasure into that, into a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu is reveling in that pleasure that they have from that person. You might think that's only Bein Adam L'Makam. But every mitzvah Bein Adam L'Chaveru is also a mitzvah Bein Adam L'Makam. As Rabbi Rutenberg said before. Because when you're nice to the children, the brothers are getting along, the parent is happy. And therefore it's potential that somebody does something all the time, they're giving nachas ruach to their parent, and they're giving nachas ruach to their friends, that they're giving nachas ruach, that every moment is lit up. It's not vacant moments. Not wide yawns. Could be somebody else, they put on their bar mitzvah tefillah, and that was the only mitzvah they have. After that, they buried the bag. And they went out and they started shopping for some other bag. Something else to do. They come back to find that that's all that they had. That's all that they have yet. So now the good news and the bad news comes out of here. The good news, I feel like before I deliver the good news and the bad news, I have to tell you a story, a joke, okay? Pardon me. Because it's just going to relax me for a second. There was two guys, Jim and Joe. They're arguing about whether there's baseball in the next world, okay? Very important, deep, philosophical. Some people ask, where's baseball in the Torah? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We went through that before, right? Actually, we said before, it's mistranslated as in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. It's really in the beginning of the creation of the heavens and the earth was void and emptiness. That's what we said before. Hashem created emptiness. He created a voidness. That's what it means. But these guys were arguing, is there baseball in the next world or not? Joe, Jim, tis, taint. You know, they don't have any reasonings to bring to their argument. Just one says yes, one says no. So they agree with him, listen, one of us is going to get satisfaction in this world. You know, we'll make a pact between us. Whoever goes there first is going to come back and tell us whether there is or there isn't. So Jim kicks off. He comes back a week later to Joe, hovering over. Joe, what is it? Jim, is that you? Yes. He says, is there or isn't there? He says, I got good news and bad news. He says, the good news is there's baseball in the next world. He says, I'm so glad. I know all the teams. I'm following all the sports. I have all those statistics. I love to play. I love to watch. He says, what's the bad news? He says, you're pitching tomorrow. So the good news is, just in case you thought nobody noticed you, you were never honored by the shul. You were never selected as Time Magazine Man of the Year, Woman of the Year. Right? You never got the kavod. You never got the proper honor. You were doing quietly things under the radar. Nobody ever noticed you. Don't worry. Everything you do is a ray of eternity. Everything you do is forever. And the bad news is, everything you do is forever. And that's the good news and that's the bad news. So that once a person realizes that everything that we do is really painted on a canvas of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and it's forever. It's a ray of eternity because it was created by Hashem. Oh boy. So while we're alive, the Mishnah in Perkei Avos says, Yafa sha'achas shel tshuva and ma'asim tovim ba'olam hazeh mikol chai olam haba. Even though the deliciousness of the whole next world doesn't add up, of the chorus ruach of this world doesn't add up to all the pleasures of this world, but a moment of tshuva and ma'asim tovim in this world is worth everything. We're here in this world, we have an opportunity in this world called a sha'achas, and many sha'achas of tshuva and ma'asim tovim. The Gemara says, what's the tachlis of chachma? The Gemara said before, we mentioned, Ezehu tipesh, who's the foolish person? Hama'abed chol masha b'yado, he destroys what he has. The Gemara says, Ezehu chacham, another definition, who's the wise person? Haroes anola, the person who sees the future. Now, Rosh Hanola doesn't mean that he's going to pick only stocks and he sees the consequences, the immediate consequences of what he's seeing, but he sees the ultimate future of what he's doing right now, how it's going to play out in eternity. And the Gemara says, Tachlis Chachma, the goal of Chachma, the Gemara in Brachot says, Tshuva and Maisin Tovim is Tshuva and Maisin Tovim. What is Tshuva and Maisin Tovim? Good deeds and Tshuva. Tshuva we think means psychoanalysis. We're going to pound our chest and we're going to go into a deep state of depression for the month of Elul. That's what Tshuva means. But Tshuva means, let's say I'm typing the story of my life. I said, let me write out my biography, my autobiography, and as I'm writing, I'm doing two things. And one day I'm writing 15 pages, I'm going further and further. Then I look back and I said, you know something, now that I just understood what I understand now about my life, I don't think I want to print this. And I don't want this being told about that person. That might hurt somebody if I print it this way. I understand life differently back there. I want to go back and edit. And I spend the next 2 days now editing. I can always edit. There's a possibility of editing. I can edit the past. So I'm either doing two things. I'm doing tshuva, which means I'm editing. I'm going back into the archives, into the film. Or I'm doing maisim tovim, or I'm acting out, and I'm living life forward in an active way. Those are the two things. I put in your hand life and death. The Torah says in the end of Chumash, I put in front of you today life and death. And the Torah says, what is life and death? You have your past, you have your future, the opportunity to turn death into life. Melech meimis umachaya matzmiach Yeshua. You can take things that happened in the past, and you can do tshuva on them. You can turn them into mitzvot. If a person does tshuva from ahava, there's many different examples. I asked a couple of weeks ago in shul, how come Miriam? We're not allowed to speak lashon hara about Miriam. We're not allowed to speak lashon hara. So how are we saying lashon hara about Miriam? Miriam, we have a zeichel of Miriam. We say lashon hara about Miriam all the time. Torah has to live up to its own standard. How come the Torah says that Miriam got saras for saying lashon hara, and now we're saying lashon hara about Miriam? Remember every day what Miriam. Right? Good question. I asked my Rebbe that years ago, and he said that Miriam would have wanted it. Miriam wanted it because she made that. She did tshuva, and she says, "Use me as the poster child of what could happen." And therefore, every time somebody mentions and stops themselves from speaking lashon hara because of Miriam, so Miriam becomes the example, and now she has a whole garden in the next world based upon the tshuva that she did. She never did tshuva, and she never says, let me be the example. So then we would never have spoken about it, but she gained from that mistake. Kamti kinafalti. I got up because I fell. There's a great opportunity when a person makes a mistake. It's not like I made a mistake and now I have to be sad for the rest of my life. Just the opposite. It's an opportunity to be masakin. Eina Torah miskayemes elav mi shemei mizatzim Allah, but except if the person fell on it first. Once you trip on something, then you can make something out of it. The Chofetz Chaim said that he held himself to be a balkas. Not that he even violated the line. We can't even imagine such a thing. But he felt himself that he was pulling in that direction. He wouldn't have to become the Chofetz Chaim. He wouldn't have understood the taivas inside people's hearts to speak if he didn't feel at least there was some kind of a magnetic pull in that direction. In order to get away from it, he had to become the Chofetz Chaim. So there's a shachas of tshuva and maisim tovim b'olam hazeh. So if a person is in this world, he can edit something. And that's the beauty. That's the tragedy when a person is taken. But that's the beauty of the survivors, that we can do something, we can do amazing things while we're alive. We can take out those things that we don't want to be forever, and we can change them. We can learn from them. And we can take the things that we know that are going to line us up, the 613 piece of advice that Torah gives us on how to be good and how to connect with other people. Shvis Hashem lenegdi sami. V'havta l'recha kamocha. B'chol darechecha da'ehu. Now all these statements in this context make perfect sense. They're not just nice phrases and aphorisms. We understand tzedakah tasel mamavis. Person works all the week long trying to find a customer. Somebody buys something. Finally, he makes some money and he gives tzedakahs, and all the chasing the bus and all the phone calls and all the yagiyah now suddenly got converted into helping somebody else out. Now it became a mitzvah. It became life. All that is part of his living movie. What's Gehenna? What's the next world? Reb Dessler says is the person gets there. It's editing that takes place on the other side. The pay later plans are always much more expensive. When it gets edited against our will, in the light of extreme truth on the other side. Of pure truth, we'll say. So now we have enough information, we'll finish up, to ask one question. And that question is the following. What is the difference between me, I'm just using me as an example, and Steven Spielberg? Yeah? I know some people think about $800 million, okay? But you don't know what I have in my bank account. We don't know what he has in his bank account either. Okay? What's the difference between me and Steven Spielberg, the famous Jewish movie maker? Interesting, Spielberg. A spiel in Yiddish is a play maker. Spielberg is a play guy. Again, it's a setup question because I didn't answer it right. What's the difference between he and I in the following context? Let's say I go on a vacation with my wife. I don't know, we didn't get a chance to go away. What can I say? Not for the last couple of years anyway. Let's say we got away for a week and we went down to the Bahamas, okay? Spent a week over there and we had a little camcorder, whatever those things, remember? You know, and then we come back and if you say, hey, we so rested, a good time, yeah, great time. And we invite over Motzi Shabbat our 10 best couple friends, you know? We're all going to sit together. We're going to have falafel. We're going to have all kinds of different, with pizza. We're going to have, spicy fries. You name it, you know? And we're all sitting together. And while everybody's sitting enjoying, suddenly press a button, a screen comes down and says, watch this, guys. You know, we're now in the viewing theater over here. I press a couple of buttons, and there is an hour and a half film of our trip to the Bahamas. And like, there it is, you know, there she is riding. Look, take a look at the camel, standing next to the camel. Look at the camel, forget about it. Okay, whoa, you know, hey, look at the waves in the back. Wave to the crowd. Okay, wave, you know, wave. And we start to move along. In about 8 minutes, everybody will have excused themselves and left the room, you know, as we're just showing this film of, you know, us waving and standing next to the natives and the locals, and you know, and riding on the camel and all the different things that we're doing, and you know, and standing from the hotel back, and people are just going to get up and start to, you know, excuse me, we got to go. I said, where are you going? I get home. The babysitter said we should be home by, you know, 9:30. Well, you just arrived 5 minutes ago. Yeah, we have a very, you know, babysitter has the finals tomorrow. You know, and says, you know, I got to go home. I have to have indigestion. I have to get my lanta. My lanta, we have my lanta. No, it's my lanta. Your lanta is not going to work. Let's get it. You know, and they're going to be out. They're going to be out the door. And the last 90% of the film, my wife and I are going to be sitting there watching by ourselves. And I can guarantee you one thing: these people will never come back to the theater again. We've alienated our best friends. Because they're always going to think, anytime we come over, we're going to drop the movie on them. We're going to start to show them home movies. Nothing more painful. Steven Spielberg makes a 3.5 hour epic wow of a film, a zach, what do we say? You know, that people are nauseous and having nightmares and they're vomiting and they're going crazy from it and their heads are spinning and they're showing it with subtitles in hundreds of different countries and with people with dubbing. And it makes hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And people lining up, they can't wait for the next one. And they'll even watch the movie about how the movie was made with all the outtakes. And he's inviting strangers into living rooms all over the world. And I've alienated my best friends. What's the difference between his movie and my movie? Hello, help me. We have all the information we need. And the answer is... Anybody want to venture a guess, quick?
They don't feel like they're in your movie.
Huh?
They don't feel like they're in your movie.
They don't feel. Why don't they feel like they're in my movie?
You didn't do a good job.
Why? So what's, you know why I didn't do a good job? Because when I was making my movie, I wasn't thinking about them. I didn't edit my film. My film was just a straight shoot, an hour and a half of sound and fury signifying nothing. You know, a good speech needs 3 things. Has a good beginning, a good end, and those two should be as close together as possible. I'm sorry, I'm in deep violation of it tonight. But this has no beginning, it has no end. If you don't know where you're going. Doesn't matter how short it is, or how long it is. But I promise you, Steve Spielberg is not walking around with a camera going like this. If I want to ask you, what do you think he's doing right now? You know what he's doing right now? Listen to this. He's reading scripts. He's reading scripts. And he's looking to say, oh, this one is good, this one's good, this one, I don't see. People are not going to like that. He knows his audience. And when he finds something, he says, this is going to excite, this is going to wow, this is going to pizzazz, this is going to jazz my audience, then I'm going to bite into that one, and I'm going to make those 365 scenes, and I'm going to make each one, I'm going to go to the bank, I'm going to tell them I want to make these scenes. I'm going to blow up a mountain. That wasn't good enough. We got to build a mountain and blow it up again. We got to make a father and son scene. We got to make a husband and wife scene. We have to make a mother and daughter scene. We have to make a family scene. We have to make a community scene. We have to make all these scenes, and we got to get it. And 95% of them are going to end up on the editing room floor. From that 5% that he has left over, he has a 3.5 hour movie of a wow. Because he was thinking about his audience. Who's going to watch this, and what experience are they going to get out of it? It says multiple times in Chumash that Avraham Avinu lifted up his eyes. He didn't turn on his camera until he gave himself permission to see what it was that he was going to take a movie of. He wasn't walking around and go, ooh, cool, ooh, 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 look at that, ooh, look at him, look at her, look at him and her. He didn't walk around with his camera like that. He knew what he was going to look at. He knew what he was going to glance at. Look at the tzitzit. With kavana. See the blue, reminds you of the sea, reminds you of the sky, reminds you of Hashem. The camera's on. I'm making a movie. Right now, I'm making a movie. You're all cameo appearances in my movie. And I'm making a cameo appearance in your movie. But we're all making movies. And when a person is studying Torah, we had an invitation to come out and learn. What is a person doing? They're sitting in the Beit Midrash, they're learning Hilchos Shabbat, they're learning how to make a Shabbos scene, to make it right. You're learning Hilchos Brachot, you're learning how to make a bracha scene. You're learning Pirkei Avos, you're learning how to make a Bein Adam L'Chavero scene. And if a person makes meaning out of every interaction, out of every scene that he has in his life, that's called Arichas Yamim, a long life. That's what we heard about Uriel before. When a person lives a life that's disconnected from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, disconnected from people. So there's a possibility during life to go to be masakin and to fix it up. But if a person doesn't, they could be left with 5 minutes worth of worthwhile stuff. But the rest of it has to be burned off with the intense light of truth, which is painful. And actually, that's what the Mishnah, the Navi says. It says, "Umagid la'adam masecha." What's told to a person? What is his conversation? Mr. Sharm quotes this in Gemara in Chagiga. Afilu sicha kala bein ish leishto. Rashi says, "Kol masav portim lefanav b'shas misaso." He says that this is what's detailed in front of a person at the end of his life. That's what we said before. Da mala mala mimcha. Know what's above from you. Know what's above mimcha from you. Ayin ra, an eye that sees. Ozen Shemas, an ear that hears. V'kol masecha b'sefer nektav, and all your deeds are written into a book. So we're making a movie. So we asked before, what's my motivation? This motivation is called Yir Shemayim. It means living with an awareness that we're with a Kodesh Baruch Hu, even though we don't see a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And the Torah comes along not to burden us and not to make life difficult. We're living in physical bodies. We're in a hidden world. Our neshamas are hidden from us. Kodesh Baruch Hu is hidden from us. But when we become aware of it, and we search and we find the Kodesh Baruch Hu like Avraham Avinu did, so then all of a sudden we become lit up and we realize that we can make meaning out of every moment of life. And suddenly we're searching, can the Torah help me make meaning out of my home life? Can it help me make meaning out of Shabbat? Can it help me make meaning out of davening? A person standing there saying, Baruch atah Hashem 100 times a day, blessed are you, peeling back the laser of creation, saying, I found you, Kodesh Baruch Hu, 100 times a day. Those become tender scenes. How does it feel to a parent when your kid or your grandchild, your child comes running up and puts their arms around you and says, hello, I love you? How does that feel? 100 times a day we put our arms around a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And we send a little note to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. We thank a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And we're davening. It's not just somebody, there's something you're drawing up one long piece of spaghetti, but something the person is actually talking and feeling that they're talking to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Nochach Pnei Hashem. Right? So that, when a person becomes aware of that, and that's what we call Arichas Yamim. And a person does tshuva and ma'asim tovim, it turns the whole life into meaning. Even the mistakes that we made now suddenly become meaningful. So that's what the Torah is about. It's teaching us how we can, each and every one of us, not that there's one Academy Award winner or one Obie, one gets the Off-Broadway award, but each one of us has the possibility of making a movie. The Torah's challenge is Ubacharta b'chaim, choose life. Choose life means that we have the ability and we have the challenge in front of us to try to make a movie that will make us into Academy Award winners, because we know the audience that we're going to be playing in front of. Who's the audience? The audience is Avraham Avinu and Yaakov Avinu and your bubby and your Zaidi and your children and your grandchildren will be watching that movie. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be watching that movie. The Sanhedrin Hagadol will be watching that movie. The Shivim Zakenim will be watching that movie. Shlomo Melech will be watching that movie. David HaMelech will be watching that movie. Wow. right? That's something that should stir us into a stage of awe and fright about what we have in front of us. So every time, every moment of life, Yafa Sha'achas Shel Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim B'Olam Hazeh, and that's how we can, Bez Hashem, grab onto an academy, an award-winning life that we have the opportunity to live over here. Thank you very much, everybody.